Hello my fellow freedom builders and welcome back to the channel. In today's video we're going to look at the numbers for the US GDP that came out yesterday, showing a whopping 33% growth in GDP on a yearly basis. And that is so unbelievable that I actually thought about calling this video something like the financial markets got talent or something like that. We want to see some magicians coming up on stage to pull some rabbit out of a hat, because 33% in GDP growth over Q3 is absolutely bogus. It is a lie. It simply is not true. However, you can put numbers together any way you like and you can come up with any numbers: 33%, 1%, 2000%, depending on how you manipulate the numbers. So today we're going to look at what GDP is and why the 33% in GDP growth, in my opinion at least, simply isn't true. So let's have a look at it. First of all, what is GDP? Well, that is gross domestic product, and there are some different ways you can calculate that, but basically if we take a look at it, it states here, I just took this from CFI, corporatefinanceinstitute.com, gross domestic product is the monetary value in local currency of all financial, economic goods and services produced within a country during a specific period of time. So in Q3, we have the United States, and all they produce in some economic goods and services is calculated together in one big bunch, and we come out with the GDP. It is the broadest financial measurement of a national's total economic activity. I should say that a lot of economists agree that GDP is kind of an obsolete way to calculate anything going on in a country, but let's just stick to it because a lot of financial medias are mentioning it. The total goods and services bought by consumers encompasses all private expenditures, government spending, investment and exports, but excludes import that take place within a designated country. Alright, so I'll not go in depth with the calculation because that is very complex and there are actually different ways you can calculate it. You can see there's the GDP on expenditure. That is pretty much what we just saw here in the last slide. Then there's something called the factor incomes, where you look at income from people and jobs and in self-employment, the profit of private business and sectors and so on. And there's something called the value of output, value added from each of the main economic sectors these sectors are, and so on. We'll have a look at the first one. That is where the main number usually comes from. Now, the thing is that when you look at the, this is just the whitehouse.gov website, you can see Donald Trump. He is the strong man in front of Air Force One here, and what we can see here is the Great American Recovery. Third quarter GDP blows past expectations. This is not to hit on Donald Trump, even though I'm not a fan, but I'm pretty sure that any president would have given a headline something like this if they have gotten plus 33% in GDP growth. Down here we can see some more details, and I will link to this below, of course. So what we can see here is that first of all, the number, and we can see that here, is this around 33% growth. And we can see the economy took a big hit. Here's Q1, here's Q2, you know, the entire virus thing. The GDP had been slowing down up until 2020, so this was not a growing economy, not a widely growing economy turning around. This was actually slightly dropping, but of course the Q1 and Q2 was a completely hole in the ground, no doubt about that. But what we need to remember here is that this is something called annualized numbers. So when we read here that the estimates, the real GDP grew 7.4%, then that is 7.4% over Q3. And the reason why they state this as 33.1% is that they calculate if we had 4 quarters in a row like this, what would that give on an annualized basis? So that would give 33%. So the economy didn't grow 33%. That's an important thing to to realize here, the thing is that all of these numbers are calculated on an annualized basis. If we could grow the economy like the Q3 here over an entire year, it would be 33%. So first of all, the economy didn't grow 33%. Just as it didn't drop 33% here, that was also an annualized number. So that is the first takeaway here. This is just one quarter. Now, what we saw here in Q1 and Q2 was, of course, due to the virus, there was lockdown and so on. The Q1 was also partially due to the lockdown in China. That because in the beginning of Q1 we didn't have the largest crisis in the United States. That was actually in China, so they couldn't ship anything out because all the factories were shut down. Not all of them, but many of them, and a lot of the harbors were shut down. So some of the Q1 drop here was not due to lack of consumer spending in the United States or lack of wanting to consume money or products, but it was simply lack of products because there was a supply hole that China could simply not supply goods enough. But then the virus came to United States and we saw this huge drop. Now this kind of indicates that we have had this V-shaped recovery that a lot of people are talking about. But do we really have that? My opinion is no. And first of all, when we look at the GDP numbers here, it says goods and services produced. Now let me take you to a good old quote from Warren Buffett. He says a lot of good things, but what he says here is actually completely true. He states, if I wanted to, I could hire 10,000 people to do nothing but paint my picture every day for the rest of my life, and the GDP would go up. So what he states here is that when GDP is calculated as products and services, he could just hire someone or hire 10,000 people to paint his picture every day, and that would generate millions and even billions in GDP. It would not really produce anything usable, and as it says here, but the utility of the product would be zilch. So nobody, the value of 10,000 pictures every day of Warren Buffett would be absolutely nothing. And I would keep those 10,000 people from doing AIDS research or teaching or nursing. I don't do that though. So what he states here is that the GDP is kind of a fluffy number, because if we just cut each other's hair and I charge you $100 to cut your hair and you cut my hair for $100, then we have actually generated $200 worth of GDP. And then we can go on to cut our neighbors' hairs or paint the picture of our neighbors, and we haven't really produced anything of real value. Of course, it's nice to get your hair cut, but it's not really something that moves the country or the society or the economy. So the GDP, when that goes up here, it could actually just be simple services as driving me from point A to point B in a cab or something like that. Now that's the first problem with it. The second problem is that the growth here that we can see in 17 and 18 and 19 is actually steady, stable growth from quarter to quarter, where United States have some growth in GDP. They're producing more, the consumers are buying more, they're spending money they have from their own work, where they are working and producing value for the company. Then things fall off a cliff here, and then all of a sudden everybody is back to work and making their own money and producing just the same goods as before. Really? No, not really. Because what we can see is that the government have printed money, they have printed trillions of dollars, and they have given the people the money out into the United States. Some have been given away, some have been as loans, but the money has been printed and then given away to the public. So they could go out to buy food and to consume some goods and some services. So what we have actually done here is that the economy broke completely down. And the government said, I completely understand why they do this, But the government said we need to stimulate the economy, so we print a lot of money, and these money are spent on services and goods internally in the country. So what they have actually done is that they have manufactured $3 trillion in GDP. I know that you cannot take these money and just say that they are directly into the GDP, but the funny part is, when we look at the numbers, here we can actually see down here that the current dollar GDP increased 38%, or 1.64 trillion in the third quarter to a level of 21 trillion, and in the second quarter GDP increased 32.2%, or 2 trillion. So what we see here is actually that the trillions of dollars that the GDP growth with is actually pretty much similar to the stimulus packages. And my opinion here, what I claim is that without these $3 trillion, we would see a GDP number just down here somewhere in the minus 20-30%. The 33% growth in GDP is simply made up by stimulus packages, and they will keep on. The US needs $3 trillion to undo the economic damage. This is from September of the pandemic, but policymakers seem unable to hear that message. Economists say, no, that's not really so. But due to the upcoming elections, of course, there have been a lot of political spin and play here, so there's not a new $3 trillion or $2 trillion or $1 trillion package right now. Of course, there's election here on Tuesday, the 3rd of November, and after that, we could suspect something to come. But what we're going to see here is that this number will drop, because there's no stimulus package coming up and running now for the next month, I suppose. And that means that we will go through most of Q4 without a stimulus package. And if that is so, then we will see these $3 trillion missing, meaning that we will see the GDP drop again. We have seen the virus numbers coming up very quickly, and we have seen beginning lockdowns here in Europe, where I am. We have seen lockdowns in Denmark, not complete lockdowns, but a lot of restrictions. We have seen France and Spain and Italy and Germany and so on starting to lock down different areas of the society and the economy, and therefore we are a bit ahead in this wave too, compared to United States, but they are coming up quickly now. So we will see beginning shutdowns in the United States as well, and combined with the lack of stimulus package in United States, we will see this GDP number tumble again when we get the Q4 numbers. That is my prediction. So what I am claiming here is that this 33% in GDP growth is completely magic trick. It is all stimulus, and it is all buying services. It's not really making anything of any value. When we are looking at all the details underneath the overall statistics of the economy in the United States, we can see more and more homeless people. We can see more and more people not being able to buy food. We can see more and more being permanently laid off. I know that the numbers of the new unemployment numbers as to how many have applied for help has been dropping a bit. But as I have said in the videos before, these unemployment numbers are also a complete spin and magic trick. So we cannot really trust the numbers anymore. There's no doubt that the 33% here, or 7.4% for Q3, is kind of a real number, but it is not 33% for an entire year, and it is made up completely by stimulus money. So that is my opinion on the subject. And when I look at the stock market right now, it seems like it is dropping. So I have a feeling that the financial markets are of the same opinion as I am. They can see the exact same thing. They can see a lot of the manufacturing simply does not have anything to do. There's not really, as long as there are not any stimulus packages, there are not much consumer money out there, and we will start to see some real dire drops in the consumer spending here up towards Christmas. That is my prediction. And without a stimulus package, I think it looks kind of bleak. And let's see what happens with the stock market now. They are starting to crunch these numbers into the calculators, and also crunch the numbers of the virus and the development there. And I think we will see some real hard selling pressure on the market over the next weeks and months. So that is my little prediction here. Of course, I am trading and investing in stocks out of my normal technical analysis strategy. So even though I think this about the economy, if everything starts to go up, I get buy signals, and of course I'll buy some stocks then. But this is just me trying to take a macroeconomic take on this, and I am not impressed with these numbers. 33% sound great. They are not. That's all for now today. Remember to go into buildingfreedom.dk and sign up for my newsletter. Remember to subscribe to the channel, hit the like button down there and all this stuff. And I'll talk to you again soon. Take care of yourself and your money out there. Bye for now.